There is no country in the world that reveres Grand Prix racing more than Italy. And the soul of Italian motor racing is at Monza. For Monza is where the fanatical Ferrari-loving tifosi assemble to worship the prancing horse. And here at Monza, Nigel Mansell has confirmed his intention to retire from Formula One at the end of the season. So, who will the tifosi shout for in place of their English lion, Nigel Mansell? Who will partner Alain Prost next season?
In fact, I can't tell you. That will not be very fair for the drivers expecting to be a teammate next year. I have some preference for sure, but the only thing I said, except the preference, I just try to analyze the advantage and disadvantages of the drivers, and then I don't want to take any part of the choice. Just my advice. I would not like a second driver, you know, because I don't want, especially to be number one, and not number one, number two is not fair. But it can't work in a team like Ferrari. It always don't work in a normal team, but here would be even worse.
Sicilian-born Jean Alesi wants to be a Ferrari driver next year, but with contracts to drive for Tyrrell and Williams, he's in a legal tangle that's going to be costly and difficult to unravel. So maybe Ivan Capelli will don the Ferrari scarlet overalls. Ivan's contract with the Leighton House team expires this year. He's Italian, he's very good, and he's a charming personality. As ever, there was lots of spectacular action here in qualifying, especially for Stefano Modena, who understandably lost control of his Brabham when its engine suddenly lost power. And power is the thing that matters more than anything else at Monza. Jonathan Palmer.
However important the other components might be, the heart of a Grand Prix car is its engine. Its regulated maximum capacity is 3.5 litres, about twice the size of that of an average family car. Yet it produces 7 times as much power, close to 700 horsepower, even though turbos are banned. As well as providing the power, the engine also forms a vital part of the structure of the car, being all that holds the gearbox with its rear suspension onto the back of the carbon fibre chassis. The number of cylinders varies. Here the Honda has 10, arranged as with them all in a V of 2 banks. The Renault in the Williams also has 10, though the shrill-sounding Ferrari has 12, and the other end of the range is the compact Ford V8 that powers the Benetton. As you might expect, the engines are computer-controlled with complex electronic management systems for the fuel injection and ignition, which helps them rev round to a dizzy 13,000 RPM. Despite all this technology, the driver still cannot start his own car, the considerable weight of a starter motor being left to a mechanic to plug in. But the teams pay a high price for all this performance. With engines only lasting one 200-mile race, they can take up to 10 spare units with them to a Grand Prix. In fact, half the budget is spent on engines, but then as Monza shows, better than anywhere, horsepower is vital.
In the World Championship, 2 drivers will soon have to discard points to comply with the best 11 scores rule. Ayrton Senna leads with a 9-race total. Alain Prost is second with 8 scores. No one else is in with a chance. Senna is in his 49th pole position, but Alain Prost was only 2/5 of a second slower. Nigel Mansell 4th, Alesi a staggering 5th, Martin Donnelly and Derek Warwick together again, 11th and 12th. 26 to start, and they're ready to go.
Team 9 has formed. There's Ayrton Senna on pole position, Prost alongside him, and in position we hope our commentary team, James Hunt and Murray Walker.
Yes, Ayrton Senna yesterday produced one of his stupefyingly fast last-minute laps in the last 60 seconds of the final practice period to take his 49th pole position, notwithstanding the fact that he had had trouble with the car earlier on in the day and had only got one fast lap in it, and he did it, pole position. Nigel Mansell there in 4th position on the grid, and of course desperately wanting a finish. He's only finished in 3 of the 12 races that have been held so far this year, and in warm-up this morning, he was 7th fastest. That's comparatively slow for him. He would have hoped to be a lot higher up than that. And with Prost second on the grid, Gerhard Berger not at all happy with his car this morning in the warm-up because he was only 5th fastest. And the astonishing Jean Alesi, about whom there has been so much speculation here at Monza, who's he going to drive for next year? And it seems it could be Tyrrell, it could be Ferrari, it could be Williams, or it might be nobody, the way things are going. But anyway, Jean Alesi is in 5th position on the grid, ahead of the 2 Williams of Thierry Boutsen and Riccardo Patrese. Now, James and I talk about tyres a lot in Grand Prix racing. This course, which has got a lap speed of some 157 miles an hour for the pole position of Ayrton Senna yesterday, is going to be no less important, and there is a great deal of confusion about the tyre choice. So here is the voice of wisdom.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but basically what we've got for the leading runners who are all on Goodyear rubber, they've got a choice of compounds. Well, there's a choice of more than 2, but the teams have been agonizing between the A compound, which is the harder of the 2 compounds, therefore more durable, but less sticky, and with not quite as much grip, but of course it will last longer, wear better, and less inclined to lose performance through overheating. And then the B compound, which is the more aggressive choice. Now, McLaren's, mindful of the World Championship, have taken advantage of this dilemma, because it isn't clear to any of the teams which is really going to be the better tyre over the race distance today. Remember that tracks change all the time, and this is quite a normal situation. Tyre choice is always something of a guess, and McLaren have been able to cover themselves to some extent, or so they hope, for the World Championship, in that Senna is going on the faster B compound, and that, if that proves to be the wrong choice, they have covered that eventuality by putting Gerhard Berger on the harder and more durable A's. What they're hoping to achieve like that, obviously, is for Senna to win the race and therefore progress further towards tying up the World Championship. But if he can't win the race, then obviously it's very important to McLaren's if they can get Berger across the line first. That takes 9 points away from many of the rivals, namely, chiefly, Alan Prost. And so McLaren feels that they can do it by that way, or at least be in the race with Berger if B's proved to be too aggressive a choice. Ferrari certainly think it is, because both their cars are being given as the cars now flagged away, the green flag for the warm-up lap, the parade lap. Remember, they are not racing now. They come around to the grid, controlled by Senna, as you see there. The pole position man will slow them down. They say engines running as they form up their grid places, and then we get a start. So Ferrari have gone for the harder A compound on both cars. And in fact, other teams are fairly well split, although A compound has been chosen by Boutsen of the Williams team, and again they have split and put Patrese on the softer B compound. There's also been a bit of drama over construction of tyres, but that's much more a political thing. It's suffice it to say that Ferrari are running old construction tyres because they came with a new construction tyre of Goodyear to Hungary, and then Ferrari turned up the next race bringing some tyres with them of the old construction at Spa, and preferred those, which caused a huge political storm, because of course the teams are contracted to use the same equipment, and the consensus had chosen the newer construction, but Ferrari had found they could go better on the old. That was withdrawn there, but they brought both constructions to this race. Now most teams are running, let me get this absolutely right, the new construction front, but they prefer the old construction rear with it. Ferrari, on the other hand, and in fact I think the Williams team have found that they prefer the old construction all the way around. So that isn't nearly as important as the compounds. Now, let's get back to the race. And coming down the final straight, Senna leading the field, a little bit of work, swerving about to get a little bit more heat in the tyres as much as possible. He's already, of course, now slowed the field down. They go quite quickly around the first half of the warm-up lap to try and take the cars through the corners at racing speeds, which is the way you really get heat into the tyres. But then, of course, it's important to arrive at the grid with the field as neatly formed behind him, so that they don't have to sit around too long while the cars at the back get into position.
And if Ayrton Senna can win his 6th Grand Prix victory of the year, he's going to be very, very difficult to beat in the World Championship in a situation where it is the best 11 out of 16 scores that count. So the two top men in the championship are on the front row of the grid. There is the man who is behind them in 4th position, Nigel Mansell. So Senna, there's the magnificent, and there is no other word, new complex of grandstands, pits, hospitality boxes on the right that have been put up at Monza to comply with the requirements of FISA, the governing body of the sport, and what an absolutely superb job they've made of it. Now, this is Berger's McLaren. There are cameras on Senna's McLaren and Berger's McLaren. There is a camera on Martin Donnelly's Lotus, which is in 11th position on the grid, and there is a camera on Stefano Modena Brabham, which is 17th on the grid. Gerhard Berger there then, and in front of him is Ayrton Senna.
Yes, and stand by really for what should be a very good motor race indeed today. We've got the main contenders for the championship all covered by very small tenths of a second in qualifying, and again in the warm-up this morning, Prost and Senna were only tenths of a second apart. Stand by for a good race.
First the red, of course, then the green, any time up to 7 seconds after the red comes on. 53 laps of Monza. The race is going to last about 1 hour and 20 minutes, rather less. And Senna gets away well, so does Berger in front of Mansell, and alongside Alain Prost and up into 2nd position. So the McLarens have done what they want to do. 1st and 2nd into the Rettifilio, with Senna leading and now trying to build a cushion immediately. Berger 2nd, Prost 3rd, and Lacey is 4th, ahead of Mansell 5th, and Boutsen is in 6th position. Are they all going to get through the Rettifilio? Yes, including Nicola Larini, who started from last on the grid. Now they go into the Curva Grande that was on towards the Rugia, the 2nd chicane, and as you can see, Prost is challenging, and Lacey is up into 3rd position. This is an incredible bit of driving. He's got ahead of both the Ferraris, from behind both of them on the grid. Now up to the two Lesmos, 130 miles an hour. That's where Prost went off in testing last week and is perfectly okay. Round the 2nd Lesmo, onto the Seraglio, down to the Ascari chicane, and it's Senna, Berger, Alesi 3rd, Prost, Mansell, Boutsen in 6th position, and Alesi's drive already is quite incredible. Nannini in 7th place, and Patrese 8th, ahead of Piquet and Gugelmin.
Yes, tremendous charging first lap from Alesi, as we've come to expect, and to great effect, getting past both Ferraris. A very poor start by Alain Prost, and that is not a good start to his afternoon's work. He definitely needed to get away well and at least split the McLarens, and he was very tardy off the grid.
Alesi's drive, as I said, is almost unbelievable. And oh God, that is a Lola. That's all I can tell. No, it's Derek Warwick. It's Derek Warwick who's crashed at the Parabolica, and as you can see, my goodness, he's okay. That is an incredible testimony to the strength and safety of the construction of the cars these days, and there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the race will have to be stopped, because the car is on the exit of the Parabolica, of course unknown to Senna, who is leading, Berger, who is 2nd, the incredible Alesi, who is in 3rd place. Warwick just ran wide at the Parabolica, and there is his car.
I'm looking for a red flag on the line, but I haven't seen anything yet. But it looked, there is the red flag. Right, red flag for the race, so they're stopping the race. And that was a horrendous accident. It looked to me a little bit as if something went wrong on the Lotus there, because Warwick suddenly went wide and went right off the racing line. It could have been, he got on, it could have been that he just got wide onto the marbles and got slippery, and we didn't really see enough of that to see if the car actually had suddenly stepped out of line and was failing to steer. But a horrendous accident, and a great testimony to the strength of the Lotus, and marvellous to see Warwick climb out from underneath that. The cockpit sail obviously completely intact, and just a big impact for him, but he bounced off the barrier, and I should think, apart from a few minor bruises, he looked pretty unhurt to me. And in fact, he's that unhurt. There is Derek Warwick running back to get back into the spare car. So Warwick not only unhurt, but even his enthusiasm is unhurt, and that's tremendous. And it seems appropriate now for me to say a word for Derek Warwick, because one of the things that I've been watching recently, brought on by Nannini's rather strange drive in Spa, which I'll talk about later, but which is certainly weird to me. It seems to me that a lot of the old soldiers really taking a bit of a holiday these days, and apart from the top four, the Ferrari and McLaren drivers, but one of the exceptions to that, of the long-term serving drivers, is Derek Warwick, who tries 110% every time he gets in the car. And look at that enthusiasm after a shunt like that to jump straight back in the spare. And it really is time that Derek Warwick was in a good drive. Now, looking at it again, we've just seen him disappear off the road, but we don't really get a long enough look as he goes wide there. Then, of course, the moment the wheels get off the road, there's no chance. Huge G-force there, just powers into the barrier. I hope the marshal wasn't hurt there. There's a marshal thrown over in the background as the car strikes the barrier.
Well, speculation this, but I know Derek Warwick was having a lot of gearbox problems earlier on, and they've had to change the gearbox, and they were actually changing the whole gear selection system after the warm-up this morning. And I've only seen one crash worse than that recently, and that was Philippe Alliot at Mexico in the Lola, when he went off and the whole car disintegrated. But, as James and I have both said, Derek Warwick is all right. There's going to be a second start later on.
Of the yellow cars here just going straight on into the barrier, and I must say that everyone at that point really feared the worst. Fire looked a possibility, but onboard extinguishers clearly did their job, and the monocoque did as well, because within seconds Derek Warwick has freed his seat belts, crawled out of the wreckage, none the worse, and the race was stopped. Well, Formula One drivers are pretty strong as well, and it took some kind of resilience to survive that. And not only that, but within seconds to be running back to the pits to get into the spare car and to get set to do it all again. Derek Warwick, one of the fittest and one of the bravest men in Formula One, and how pleased we are to see him set for the restart. We're on board with the McLaren of Gerhard Berger, live on the warm-up lap, heading for the restart, and our commentary team once again, James Hunt and Murray Walker.
And as you look up at Gerhard Berger and now at Alain Prost, there's Berger. Let me assure you, and those of you that saw that horrific accident that Derek Warwick was involved with, that the Iron Man, the lion-hearted Derek Warwick, is not only perfectly okay, but has been having a jocular conversation with all sorts of people, said, as Steve has just said, that it was his fault because he just lost it going out of the Parabolica, where he would have been doing some 150 miles an hour shortly before he changed up into sixth gear, and he sprinted back to the pits, is in the spare car, and we have it all to do again, especially Alain Prost. It's a 53-lap race, as it would have been before, because it's as though the previous race had not happened. And I say Alain Prost has got it all to do again because I remind you that Jean Alesi, who is the third car on the right-hand side of the grid, as you look at it, the blue and white car, in the Tyrrell with the Brian Hart-tuned Cosworth engine, which has at least 60 horsepower less than the cars in front of him, was up into third place. He got ahead of both the Ferraris of Prost and Mansell, so even assuming that Prost had been able to get going, he would have had a job. So, the red, and then less than 7 seconds the green for the second start of the 1990 Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Go! Senna's done it again. Prost hasn't made the same mistake. He cuts in front of Gerhard Berger, who has to move across and sprints up again alongside Prost and past him. So Berger's done it again, as he did on the first start, and it's Senna, Berger, Prost, and Alesi is fourth. Mansell is fifth. Boutsen is in sixth, seventh place. race. Behind Patrese, his teammate who got ahead of him. They are all through the Rettifilio. That's the double chicane. Round the Curva Grande again, up to the Rugia. Now up to the Lesmo bends. And Alesi is again going through into third position, sprinting past Prost Ferrari. I find this beyond comprehension, frankly, because he's got so much less horsepower than the Ferrari, which is supposed to handle superbly and indeed does, but yet Alesi has punched his way through into third place on the first lap before even half of it had been completed. Berger and Senna, second and first in formation, and Mansell coming up to take Prost and try and take fourth position from him. There's Alesi third, Prost fourth, Nigel Mansell, Ferrari in fifth position.
Yes, referring to Alesi, Murray, that of course it's very much aerodynamics running down through the Curva Grande to that chicane, and of course the aerodynamics of the Tyrrell are very good. It is a very quick car in a straight line, and of course he had the tow from Prost because he was right into Prost's gearbox, getting the hole in the air that the Ferrari made, and able to dip out and his momentum carry him through.
Well, there he goes. Senna leads. Berger second, Alesi third, Mansell fourth, Prost fifth, being caught by Patrese in sixth position. This time, thank heavens, they got round the Parabolica perfectly well, and the incredible Alesi is actually closing on Gerhard Berger. Is he going to be able to do the same to him that he did to Prost? Get in the tow of the McLaren and maybe take second place. I think that would be hoping for too much, or rather expecting too much. Senna leads McLaren. Berger second, McLaren. Alesi, look at the gap he's pulled out over Prost, with Mansell in fifth position. There is the Williams, and Nannini is up into sixth place in the Benetton. Very little gap between the first three as they go round the Curva Grande for the second time. Now up to the Rugia, and Berger, of course, don't forget that Berger wants to win and intends to win just as much as Ayrton Senna. There's no question of Berger having to defer to the Brazilian, and Berger has yet to win a race for McLaren. And look at Alesi, he nearly went off there last week. And he's coming down now, right with Gerhard Berger, and he's challenging for third position, second position as they go into the Parabolica.
Yes, Prost taking it fairly steadily, it would appear at the moment, in fourth place, certainly dropping back, letting the two McLarens and Alesi get away and have their own little fight at the moment. But the interesting thing to watch will be the relative performance of the two McLarens, remembering that Senna is on the softer and less durable tyre that ought to be quicker, but if the car is really heavy on the full tanks, it may not even work like that. Berger on the harder tyre, and Berger certainly looking like a man who wants to get past Senna and get away.
Race order then, lap 2, Senna leading Berger with Alesi right behind them. The first V8 powered car with the old Ford Cosworth DFR engine, and the big gap now between himself and Prost, with Mansell in fifth position. Patrese is sixth, Nannini is seventh, Boutsen is eighth, Piquet is in ninth position, and Gugelmin is 10th, the leaders. And the two Ferraris are either being driven very tactically or are being shown up by not only the McLaren but the Tyrrell Cosworth, because there's an ever-increasing gap now between John Alesi right up as they go into the Ascari chicane, the third, fourth, and then out of it into fifth gear corner chicane. Now down the 160, 185 mile an hour straight into the Parabolica as the rest of them go through, and Berger is still with Senna as they come out of the Parabolica. It's 125 miles an hour as they go into it, about 160 miles an hour as they come out of it, down the long straight where they build up to just a whisker under 200 miles an hour before going down into second gear. And so Senna goes through, Berger, Alesi, there's less than a second between Senna and Alesi, who is third. Prost is still fourth, Mansell fifth. There's the battle. Prost, Mansell in fifth position. Look back, and Nannini is going through and taking Patrese. Nannini moving up one place ahead of Riccardo Patrese. He's done it, and Piquet is right behind the two Williams cars as well. Senna, Berger, Alesi. Prost, Mansell, Nannini, then Patrese and Boutsen, followed by Piquet. And Maurizio Gugelmin is in 10th place. Martin Donnelly is 11th. Deonard is 12th. And the brave Derek Warwick after that dreadful crash, is in 13th place, and we are on lap 4 now in this 53-lap race. Titanic scrap at the front. As I was saying, Berger is going to be pushing Prost very hard indeed, particularly as he will hope that by doing so he can make the Brazilian wear his tyres more than he would ideally like to. That's Thierry Boutsen, who has dropped back behind Alessandro Nannini.
Well, as the race has settled down now and everybody's lapping on their own, Prost is certainly holding the leading three for speed. Senna still looking as if he may not have made as good a tyre choice as Gerhard Berger, but remember that the tactics for that are to cover themselves for both eventuality within the McLaren team. So Senna still leads, and Alesi loses it. A mistake from Alesi. Now, has he damaged that right rear? Just brushed the barrier? Probably not, but it looks to me as if he stalled the engine anyway.
Out of the race, Jean Alesi, and this of course has made things much easier for the McLarens. Jean Alesi on Pirelli tyres as opposed to the others on Goodyear's. Here's the replay. Watch it go into the left-hander. The back steps out. There's nothing he can do about it. And that, of course, is where Jean-Louis Schlesser rammed Ayrton Senna the year before last and caused the Brazilian to lose the leadership in the Italian Grand Prix. So now it's Senna leading, Berger second, Alesi walking in lamely to explain to Ken Tyrrell, who won't be best pleased, what happened, which means to say that now the two McLarens lead the two Ferraris.
Well, interestingly, down the field a little bit, Nannini has put up the fastest lap of the race so far, and remember he got into clear air behind as he passed, once he got past the two Williamses, and is following Mansell, and he is on the softer Beacon line. There he is, there goes Nannini. It's two Williamses, and Nelson Piquet's teammate also on the softer compound, at the moment still able to do nothing about getting past the Williamses.
Yeah, and the McLarens are already looking as though they've got it made. Prost has just gone round in 1 minute 29.2, which is slower than both the McLarens, which are therefore pulling away from him. Nigel Mansell in 4th position, Nannini there in 5th place. There are the two Williams, Patrese 6th, Boutsen 7th, Nelson Piquet in 8th position, Gugelmin is 9th, Martin Donnelly in 10th position in the Lotus, ahead of his teammate Derek Warwick, who is now up to 12th, because everybody has moved up a place with the disappearance of Jean Alesi, as into Lesmo 1 and Lesmo 2 go the two McLarens. Now the gap between Berger, who is in 2nd position, and Alain Prost, who is in 3rd position, is about 1.6 seconds, and we'll keep a very careful eye on it, although visually, Berger looks round the side of Senna's car as they go into the Ascari chicane. You see the Benetton there of Nannini, who is closing on Mansell. There is Patrese, Boutsen, Piquet, Gugelmin in the yellow-topped helmet, Martin Donnelly behind him, then Eric Bernard in the Lola. We're down to the Parabolica. That long, sweeping, 180-degree right-hander. Out of it at 160 miles an hour come Ayrton Senna and Gerhard Berger, chased by Alain Prost. Now, Senna crosses the line, Prost crosses the line. Exactly 2 seconds between Senna leading and Prost in 3rd position. And Nigel Mansell is 2.3 seconds behind the leading McLaren. There he is, looking down at the Rettifilio. That is Alessandro Nannini. Then Patrese, Boutsen. We are riding now with Gerhard Berger in the McLaren, and we're coming out of the Curva Grande down to the 2nd chicane, the Roja. I wish we'd been able to stay with him, because we would have seen ahead of him Ayrton Senna. Here is the Brazilian. Lesmo 1. 130 miles an hour and building.
Yes, and Berger looks particularly quick through the two Lesmos. It pulls him right up on Senna's tail each time with the help of the toe. And Berger, to me, looks at the moment the quicker, marginally quicker of the two McLarens. And Prost seems to have got just a little bit closer this time. So Prost is closing in, and Prost, I think, will be reasonably happy to stay behind the two McLarens till getting towards half distance, in the hope that Senna may have to go in and change the tyres, and then that will narrow things down as Jean Alesi walked back after basically throwing it away on his own there. He just went in a little bit quick to that corner. The back of the car got away from him, and he was going too quickly really to catch it.
Now, it was 2 seconds between Senna and Prost. And it's still just about the same. Into the Rettifilo. No, it's less now as Prost goes out of it. The Frenchman has certainly got the hammer down. 1.3, 1.4 seconds behind Gerhard Berger in second position. We are now on lap 8 out of 53. Senna leading Berger by just about half a second. You can see for yourself what it is in terms of distance. Prost third. Mansell in the second Ferrari, still going strong. Thank heavens in fourth position. Nannini is fifth, ahead of Patrese sixth, Boutsen seventh, Piquet eighth, Gugelmin ninth, Donnelly 10th, Bernard in 11th place. Derek Warwick is in 12th position, and at the present moment the fastest man on the circuit is unsurprisingly Ayrton Senna, who's forcing hard at the beginning of the race. Nigel Mansell is just about the same time in terms of lap speeds as the Brazilian.
And further down the field, Derek Warwick, who we saw earlier have that horrendous shunt which caused the race to be stopped and restarted, is out in the spare car and is holding down a very steady third place. And that is Pierluigi Martini, looking like he was coming to a halt. And a tough one for Derek. To those of you at home who are wondering how somebody can get into a shunt like that, or more importantly get out of it and then run up the track full of enthusiasm and jump in the other car, well, of course it's a brave thing to do after a big fright like that. But what you have to remember, you are protected by nature in that the start of a Grand Prix is a very hyped up thing for the body. You get lots of adrenaline pumping anyway. And there's a replay of something happening in the distance, and that is Martini's blow-up there. And so that was the demise of Martini. But, and then, of course, the accident that Warwick was in will also have pumped him even fuller of adrenaline. Very keen to get out of the car. He was fortunate in that, although he was underneath an upturned car, there was a little gap for him to slither out of. And really, of course, the adrenaline then protects you from feeling any bruises, really, that you get initially, and also keeps your enthusiasm going. And I think that really the worst he would have suffered from that accident is a bit of a stiff neck and some minor bruising, and he won't be feeling that yet. But poor Derek, he may be feeling it towards the end of the race. Oh dear.
Martini, and you can see what's happened to the right rear wheel of his Minardi as he limps back to the pits, obviously to retire, and the leaders come out of the Parabolica to complete lap 9 out of 53, looking visually as though Prost is closer to Senna. I'll tell you the answer to that as they cross the line, which Senna does now, and Prost does now, and Prost is 1.6 seconds behind the leader, Ayrton Senna, and is definitely closing. He's just gone round in 1 minute 28.9, and that is sufficient to close him up. You can see for yourselves he's getting closer and closer to Gerhard Berger. So it's McLaren leading out of the Curva Grande down to the Rugia, the second chicane. The fastest race ever in Grand Prix history was at Monza here in 1972 when Peter Gethin won in a BRM at an average of some 152 miles an hour, if my memory serves me correctly. And the pole position speed here today was 157, but the difference is that when Peter Gethin won, there were no chicanes. Now there are 3 of them: the Rugia, the Ascari and the Rettifilo, and Alain Prost is definitely reeling in the 2 McLarens. But catching them may not be as difficult as getting past them, because now with the crowd who are watching this race on giant diamond television screens going potty at the thought of the Ferrari up with the 2 McLarens, Alain Prost is gaining. Nigel Mansell is still 4th. Nannini is still 5th. There is Patrese 6th, weaving in front of Boutsen 7th, and Nelson Piquet in 8th position. Gugelmin is in 9th place. Over the line goes Senna, Berger, Prost. It's as quick as that. Into the Rettifilo. This is it. The 2 McLarens. Senna, I remind you, on softer tyres than Gerhard Berger, and Alain Prost is similarly on harder tyres than the Brazilian. So if the Ferrari in third place and the McLaren in second place can push Senna hard enough to make him wear his tyres harder than he would like, we could see a change later on in the race. Meantime, we are at about 1/5 distance.
Yes, well, the three leaders now are very much locked in combat. Prost there to cover anything, and I would think that if Prost is aware, which he may or may not be, of the compounds that the two McLarens are running, if he is aware of that, I would think he'd be much more worried about Gerhard Berger at the moment than Ayrton Senna. Berger is still pressing Senna, still looking for a way round, and it would seem that the harder compound with the heavy cars and everything seems at the moment would appear to be the choice.
This is Berger. Behind him is Nigel is Alain Prost. Ahead of him is Ayrton Senna. Now, the Ferrari team has repeatedly been accused of not being able to run two cars. That is a Lola down there, definitely. And it is Eric Bernard who is out of the Italian Grand Prix to join Jean Alesi and Pierluigi Martini as the leaders go into the Rettifilo. 1.58 seconds between Senna leading, Prost third. The Ferrari, as I was saying, team have been accused of not being able to run two cars. And it is interesting that Nigel Mansell in fourth position in what should be an identical Ferrari is dropping back all the time. That is Eric Bernard, seemingly not too unhappy as he waves to the crowd who give him a terrific cheer. Enormous enthusiasm here at Monza from the Italian crowd, who are tremendously knowledgeable. And on lap 12 out of 53, the gap between Senna leading and Prost third, and you saw the three of them together there, is under 1.5 seconds now. Mansell is fourth, 4 seconds behind Prost. Nannini is fifth, 2 seconds behind Mansell. Patrese is in sixth position. Boutsen is seventh. Piquet eighth. Gujem in ninth. Martin Donnelly is still 10th. Derek Warwick has moved up into 11th position. Capelli is in 12th place. And the leaders now. This is Gerhard Berger. He is travelling at over 160 miles an hour, building up to 185. It's the Parabolica coming. There it is. Senna, Berger, Prost, Mansell, Nannini, then the battle. Patrese with his teammate Boutsen behind him. Both of them were very unhappy about the handling of the car in the warm-up this morning. Boutsen saying that he felt that the corner weights were wrong. And it's 1.2 seconds now between Senna leading and Prost in third position. Senna's just gone round in 1 minute 28.9. Berger has put up the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 28.57, compared with the lap record, 1 minute 26.7.
Yes, and a new fastest lap for Nigel Mansell on that lap. So, although he seemed to be struggling in his Ferrari, he seems to have got it going now. There is Mansell. And Mansell will have to keep going at that pace to try and haul in the leading group. And that would certainly be a help to Alain Prost. It is Nigel's stated aim as he serves out what would appear certainly to be the end of his career at Ferrari, the remainder of this season. And his stated aim is that he will do what he can to help Alain Prost win the World Championship. And certainly he's working hard to get in a position to make a contribution to that. And at the moment is catching the leading three slightly. Senna still pressing Berger still pressing Senna, looking at times for a way round. But with the very close proximity of Alain Prost, I'm quite sure that Senna at the moment will want Berger to stay where he is and protect his rear from the attentions of Alain Prost.
Yes, indeed he will, but of course Berger, unlike Mansell, is not deferring to the man in front of him. Gerhard Berger wants to get ahead of Ayrton Senna and win his first race for McLaren, and not just to block and prevent Alain Prost from getting past him. Not that Prost is close enough to even think about doing that at the moment. He's got to be much closer to the rear wing and the gearbox of the McLaren Honda in front of him as they go round that sweeping right-hander underneath the bridge out of the two Lesmo bends. This historic circuit at Monza is the oldest in Grand Prix racing that's been used consistently. It was first used in the 1920s. All the greats have driven here, the Auto Unions and Mercedes before the war, and I don't know what that is. I can only tell you it's a cloud of smoke, and it's certainly a Lotus, and it's Martin Donnelly out of the Italian Grand Prix. So that is Alesi, Martini, Bernard and Donnelly out by lap 14 as the leaders come down to the Parabolica. No change. Senna, Berger, Prost. This is Mansell, 4th. That is Nannini, 5th. Here is Patrese, 6th. Boutsen, 7th. Piquet in 8th position. That is the closest battle on the circuit. Coming towards us just there was Mauricio Gugelmin in 9th position, and that means to say that Derek Warwick has moved up into 10th as the leaders go through to complete their 14th lap, and Prost is inching up. Every lap he seems to be just a little bit closer, and here is Martin Donnelly, and that is a major engine blow-up.
Yes, that's a really spectacular cloud of smoke, and it must have been very difficult for the drivers right behind him to see where on earth they were going. But everybody seemed to get through all right. There is Martin Donnelly, just removing his helmet and his balaclava. And he'd be disappointed, of course, but that is a matter really beyond his control. And the new fastest lap for Ayrton Senna. So as the fuel load comes down, as normal, the lap speeds are increasing slowly, steadily. Martin Donnelly looks quite at ease with life. He's done the best he can for the day, that's for sure. So Prost tracking the two McLarens, and it would appear at the moment here was a view from Gerhard Berger's car. Senna now, as they go onto the brakes, he'll close up towards Senna. There we are, getting closer. And Nannini got past this group we're looking at now and went very quickly for a lap and a half, and then his progress seemed to stop. Whether he's steadied down to have a peaceful afternoon like Spa or not, we don't yet know.
I think you should elaborate on that. You've accused Nannini of lack of endeavour at Spa.
Yes, I did. I didn't really accuse him during the race at Spa because I didn't have all the facts at my fingertips, but I was very surprised, Murray, if you remember, and those aficionados who watch and listen carefully may remember that I was surprised that Nannini went so dramatically quickly. There's Piquet climbing all over the back of the second Williams of Boutsen there and looking for a way round, but he's been doing that for several laps and to no effect. But going back to Nannini, I was very surprised after the bumping wheels incident with Gerhard Berger towards the end of the race how dramatically quickly he went. Well, I then got a printout of his lap times of his entire race, the story of his race afterwards, and that is the Pirro, Emanuele Pirro, and he's out of the race, and we're getting quite a few people spun off and parking in odd places. There's Piquet still. Now, this time it looks, no, Piquet still can't get on those brakes late enough to get inside. Anyway, returning to Nannini, he then produced 2.5 seconds quicker than he'd been lapping for the majority of the race when all the drama happened with Gerhard Berger. He'd been lapping around about the 1:58, is his average sort of lap time after pit stops. When Senna came out, he was with Senna. He could have chased Senna, as it subsequently proved, from the speed he was able to go. But anyway, he soldiered on being peaceful at around 1:58 dead, until Berger. He then let Prost catch him and pass him with no response, no attempt to fight. That's Emanuele Pirro walking back. And improved his lap time a little bit when Berger got right on his tail, took it down to a low 1:57, and that was all right. We thought, well, he's going better. He hasn't stopped the tyres. Maybe his tyres were a bit warm. And then when he had the wheel bumping incident with Berger, his next lap was a 1:55.6, and the next 3 laps after that, when he was ahead of Berger, were all in the 1:55s, which was 2.5 seconds quicker than he'd been going from the vast majority of the race, and a 7.5 quicker than he'd gone when pushed a bit faster than he'd been going before by Berger. So quite clearly, the driver was not giving it by anything like 100% effort or 100% speed, and should have been chasing Senna for the lead when in fact he wasn't racing them. And really, to me, this is horrendous.
Derek Warwick into the pits on this, the 17th lap. It's not Lotus's day. Martin Donnelly out. Derek Warwick had that enormous crash. Now he is in the pits, and it looks to me as though it's more than a wheel change. I can see him, you can't. You are watching now, of course, Gerhard Berger, and Ayrton Senna has increased his pace. He's made the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 28.1 seconds. That's a speed of 147.2 miles an hour, still outside the lap record, which he put up in the Lotus Turbo, actually, not in a McLaren, some years ago. And Senna is now leading by 1.3 seconds and doing what he does so well, carving through the tail enders as Prost and Berger together pass the Ligier, and now Prost is right up with Berger, and it looks to me as though he's having a real go for second position. Senna, Berger, Prost, Mansell, Nannini, Patrese, Boutsen, Piquet, Gugelmin is in 9th position, and Capelli is up into the place that was held by Derek Warwick.
Yes, Prost was trying to take advantage of the back marker then, which split the two McLarens a little bit, and he will now be keen to try and get past Berger. He has a better chance of getting past Berger now than he did when Berger was following Senna, because of course if he gets the toe on the straight behind Berger, and Berger's following Senna, as he pulls out, Prost goes into clear air because Senna can stay behind Berger, and that makes it difficult. And of course Berger is not getting the toe from Senna. Now this is where Prost will want to be very, very close to Berger. Now, can the Ferrari pick up the toe? I don't think he's close enough this time to break him outbreak him into the first chicane. Now he's getting closer, he's pulling in under the toe, but not close enough to attack. So, just returning to Nannini for a moment, of course, he would contend that to finish the race he had to look after his tyres, but in which case then you have to examine his brain rather than his driving, because for somebody to do the fastest lap of the race, and much faster than they've gone before with only 5 or 6 laps to go in the Grand Prix, clearly means that they haven't used their tyres to the best up to that point, because his fastest lap was 4 or 5 laps to go, and maybe he was trying to save his tyres for this race and use the same set. But to the people who spend millions, such as Ford, charming man though he is, surely they cannot countenance having a man in the team who is not giving him his best when everybody else has made such a huge effort to get everything right for the Grand Prix, and then of course he just goes and soldiers around quietly and not really racing, and this really is a worry.
Gerhard Berger, second position, 0.3 of a second behind him on the clock is Alain Prost, but it's very, very difficult for the Frenchman. The performance of the McLaren in second place and the Ferrari in third seems to be identical. Meantime, Ayrton Senna, with fastest lap after fastest lap, is calmly building his lead. Out of the race goes Thierry Boutsen, and incidentally, Derek Warwick has retired, and so now the race is devoid of Alesi, Martini, Bernard, Donnelly, Pirot, Warwick and Boutsen, and there's the confirmation of Ayrton Senna, 1 minute 28.069. That's still 1.3 seconds outside his own lap record. 147.3 seconds. There is the gap. That was Senna. Here is Berger. There is Prost. You saw in the background Nigel Mansell, who is still soldiering on in 4th position, nearly 5 seconds behind his teammate Prost. 5th is Nannini, 6th is Patrese, 7th is Piquet.
And Prost's car suddenly looks to be sliding a little bit more than it was. I wonder if he's dropped back a tiny bit from Berger. I have a sneaking suspicion he may have a puncture or some problem. He certainly, through the first chicane, he slid a lot. We'll just keep an eye on Prost for a couple of laps.
We're getting another demonstration of the mastery of Ayrton Senna, who stupefied everybody, and we thought we were bulletproof to Ayrton Senna, but yesterday he produced an absolutely spellbinding pole position lap at the very last moment, and he is demonstrating his tactical ability as well as his driving ability, as well, of course, as the performance and reliability of the McLaren Honda that he's driving. He's now completed 19 laps. We're on 20 laps. We're on lap 21. And Ayrton Senna is ahead of this battle for second and third between Berger and Prost by nearly 2.5 seconds. He's actually lapped that last lap a bit slower than Gerhard Berger. There's the gap between Berger and Prost. Mansell is still fourth, so it's still the two McLarens and the two Ferraris, the top four cars of Grand Prix racing of 1990, with Nannini 3 seconds behind Mansell now, powered by the Ford V8 engine. And there is Prost through, so he's done it at last.
Yes, and looked, I think Berger must be in trouble because Prost seemed to go through without any sort of a fight, unless Berger missed a gear, because he's certainly holding up with Prost now, so maybe out of the chicane, as they went into Lesmo, it's easy to miss a gear there and have a bit of a fumble, because you're trying to line the car up to the Lesmo and you're accelerating very hard, and my suspicion would be that Gerhard Berger missed a gear there, because Prost appeared just to romp past him without difficulty.
Senna, you can see, is now up behind Modena. He's lapping quite a lot of people. He's behind Stefano Modena as he comes through to complete his 21st lap. And if Prost can benefit from the traffic, that was an attempt to give us a replay, I think. Something seems to have to the tape. Anyway, Ayrton Senna now is carving his way through the field. The crowd realises that Prost, and that was the replay of him passing Gerhard Berger, is in second position, 3.4 seconds on lap 22 out of 53 behind Ayrton Senna. So the rivals who head the World Championship and who between them have won 10 of this year's races have now got the Italian Grand Prix.
Yes, I've had a look at the tyres on Prost's car. There is Prost very much in amongst the traffic. And he won't want this to become a race for charging through the traffic too much, because we know that Senna can outdo him on that issue every time. And I've had a look at Prost's tyres, and they certainly doesn't appear to be a problem. I can't see any sign of one deflating, and he seems to be running all right now. So maybe he just got a bit wide one time. If you get your tyres on the marbles, when they're hot, they go all sticky. They pick up the rubbish that's offline, and it takes a lap or so normally for the tyres to shed those marbles that are stuck to them, and during that time you have very much reduced grip.
And you now see Alain Prost behind Stefano Modena as Ayrton Senna comes through to complete lap 22. Now, there's Modena. And Prost will want to get past him before the Rettifilia, because he will be slowed up. And there's Senna has once again demonstrated how good he is at getting through traffic. The gap has increased from 3.4 seconds to 5.2 on that one lap, with Senna going round nearly 2 seconds faster than Alain Prost, who, however, has now got a clear track ahead of him. Berger is dropping back all the time. He's nearly 2 seconds behind Alain Prost now, and he's less than a second ahead of Nigel Mansell, and there is Nigel Mansell. So we're getting a really interesting situation now. McLaren leads, Ferrari second, McLaren third, Ferrari fourth, with Nigel Mansell at the wheel and closing. Vanini is still fifth, Patrese is still sixth, Piquet is still seventh, Gugelmin eighth, Capelli ninth, Nakajima is 10th, Suzuki is in 11th place, and everybody up to Suzuki has been lapped by Ayrton Senna. As you look at Nigel Mansell closing on Gerhard Berger's McLaren, is there something wrong with the Austrian's car? Prost, Berger, Mansell.
The only thing I can speculate there, Murray, is that he might be having a little bit of gear selection trouble. The McLaren transverse box has been its bugbear in the past, and it certainly appeared to be a missed gear that allowed Prost to get the jump on him into the Lesmos.
Senna and Prost are lapping to within 1/10 of a second at exactly the same time as each other. That's Nigel Mansell you're looking at. 1 minute 28.8 Senna. There is Mansell, who is in fourth position chasing Gerhard Berger. And Nannini seems to be able to do nothing about the Ferrari of Mansell in front of him. He is nearly 3 seconds behind it, and Patrese is nearly 4 seconds behind him in sixth position.
Now, the interesting dilemma is going to be for the McLaren pit, as I'm quite sure there will be lots of calculators going mad there at the moment, and lots of brain power being applied as to whether they should get Senna in for a tyre change. Because if they're going to get him in, they need to get him in pretty soon. We are very much in the tyre change moment to get the best out of both sets of tyres. But of course, at the moment, he doesn't really have a commanding enough lead. But what they don't know, they're totally imponderable, is how much Senna's softer tyres will drop off in performance in the second half of the race.
I often wonder what use to viewers those numbers along the bottom of the screen are, because you need to know the car's numbers. But if you see them again, that's what they are. The number 27 on the left was indicating that the lead car is that of Ayrton Senna, number 27, with number 1 world champion Alain Prost behind him, 28 Gerhard Berger third, number 2 Mansell in 4th position, 19 Nannini 5th place, and number 6 Riccardo Patrese in 6th position. With his teammate Thierry Boutsen out of the race, there is the lone Ferrari. Things are getting very spread out now.
At the moment, Senna is still inching away from Alain Prost when they have clear laps, and there is Gugelmin in the Leighton House just in front of our commentary position, just right beyond the pits, has pulled in, and that looked very much like a blown engine or something mechanical blown up. There was a bit of smoke, and then everything switched off, and there he is. So at the end of the day's work from Maurizio Gugelmin. That is Mansell lapping De Cesaris. Not always an easy thing to do here at most circuits, but here at Monza, for the more powerful senior cars, there is plenty of straight where they can nip past on pure straight line speed and power. Berger following through, but at the moment Senna is still inching away from Prost, but the dilemma for McLaren's is that he's not really inching away fast enough. His lead last time they went over the line was under 5.5 seconds, and of course for a pit stop and a new fastest lap for Ayrton Senna, not dramatically quicker than he was going before, but Prost lost a lot of time in the traffic on that lap. The lead is now nearly 8 seconds, so Prost lost, getting on for 2 seconds, over 2.5 seconds on that lap. And that is what McLaren's want to see, because they will really need something like 25 seconds on the road, is what a pit stop will cost them. They don't, of course, have to have a 25-second lead when they make that stop, but they've got to be sure that they've got the lion's share of it. Otherwise, Senna, of course, on fresher rubber, they know he'll be able to catch, but will he be able to catch Prost fast enough? I would suspect at the moment that they will err on the safe decision, because pit stops have their own element of risk, and if you've got a wheel stuck on and things like that, they don't always work smoothly, and I would think that their safe course would be to keep Senna out there.
Yes, I was going to say, always assuming that he stops, and we don't know that he's going to. Meantime, there is Mansell, who has got ahead of De Cesaris in the Dallara, and his teammate Pirro has retired. With several teams, we've only got one of the cars left. We've got both McLaren still running, of course, first and third. Both Ferraris still running, second and fourth. Both Benetton still running, Nannini 5th and Piquet in 7th position. Riccardo Patrese is in 6th place. Senna has now completed his 26th lap, and he's 7.6 seconds ahead of Prost. So Prost, who's lapping in exactly the same time to within 1/10 of a second, seems to have stabilised things. Berger has now got Mansell 2.5 seconds behind him. Nannini is still 5th, Patrese is still 6th, and Piquet is still 7th. And the leader has lapped everybody up to Nelson Piquet's 7th place.
Yes, well, as you can see from that picture there, Prost now has the attentions of Gerhard Berger to worry about, and that is something that he really doesn't need at the moment, because in the traffic he lost ground, and that brought him backwards towards Berger. There's more traffic ahead of them, and Berger seems to have got over the problem. If he had some selection trouble, it's very often that you can, once alerted to the difficulty, you can take particular care over whatever gear change is causing trouble, and he certainly seems to be going perfectly full racing speed at the moment.
Down to the Parabolica, Ayrton Senna is stamping his mark on the Italian Grand Prix. This is Gerhard Berger pulling out to pass I think it was Alex Cathey's Arrows, which is still running well, albeit it's been lapped by Senna, who's just completed his 27th lap with 26 to go. Therefore, Prost and Berger go through, and Senna has just got very close to the lap record now, or much closer. 1 minute 27.811. He's continuing to increase his speed. That's 147.75 miles an hour for the full lap, to increase his lead over Alain Prost to nearly 8.5 seconds. Prost leading Berger by 1.3. It's very static. There's no change in the first 7 places.
Yes, and in the light of the way speed that Senna's managing to produce at the moment, I'm sure McLaren will keep him out there and they'll be looking to go the distance, because there isn't really a wear problem with these, even the softer compound. It's much more a question of drop-off of performance, and the tyre certainly seems to be holding up well. So I think from a tactical point of view, Prost can safely assume that that Senna is not going to stop, and therefore he's going to have to chase him down all the way. There's Mansell just going through more back markers. And of course they'll be with back markers for the rest of the race.
Yes, I maligned Alex Cathey. It was Michele Alboreto that they were lapping. Here's Prost second, Berger third, Mansell fourth in the background. He's dropped back compared with the gap that existed between him and the Austrian Gerhard Berger earlier on in the race. And Senna is now looking more and more as though he is the man who is going to score his 26th Grand Prix victory here today.
Well, Prost certainly fighting back. New fastest lap of the race for Alain Prost. There it goes on the caption. And so Alain Prost is by no means finished yet. He's fighting back. Gap still, though, with all the traffic problems. Senna's renowned bravery and speed through the traffic, still over 8 seconds, though.
We'll see 8 men out of the race. Alesi, Martini, Bernard, Donnelly, Pirot, Derek Warwick. So it's both the Lotus cars out, Boutsen and Gugelmin. And Lotus have had another blow with the news that they are not going to be able to have Lamborghini engines next year any more than Lola are, because the Italian concern have said that next year it will be Ligier and the new Glass team that will have their V12 engines. That is Alain Prost on a charge. As James has just said, his previous lap was the fastest of the race, but even then it was only 0.2 of a second faster than Senna's, and Prost was 8.2 seconds behind the Brazilian. So he's got a massive gap to carve into before he even catches the McLaren Honda, always assuming that he does. And that was Nigel Mansell. Here is Senna. Watch the leader. 8.5 seconds ahead of Prost. The circuit is clear between the two cars, and Senna's actually again increased his lead because his lap was 0.3 of a second faster. Berger, Mansell, Nannini and Patrese is down to 6th place.
Yes, Prost of course had a car to lap in the course of that previous lap, hence the reduction in speed. Now both leaders are clear. Prost has a clear track from him to Senna, and for a few laps we may have no back markers for Alain Prost, and we'll get a chance to see just if Alain Prost can do anything about chipping into Senna's lead. This is now the critical stage of the race, and it's the chance for Prost to try and carve a bit into that lead with a clear track in front of him.
It is lap 30, and we've got the two rivals. Ayrton Senna leading Prost in the World Championship by 13 points. Senna's from 9 races, Prost's from 8 races, and it is the best 11 scores out of 16 in the World Championship series of races, from Phoenix at the beginning of the year down to Australia at the end, which count.
Well, the good news for the race, for us spectators, is that apart from a rather sick Ligier, there's nothing much in front of Ayrton Senna. There is the Ligier, just got a glimpse of it there, but it shouldn't be a problem to deal with that, because it sounded to be running a bit rough, unless it was just a broken exhaust, which makes a horrible noise but doesn't hurt the power very much. And Alain Prost back in the 27s, and again took that 0.3 of a second back that he lost on the previous lap to Ayrton Senna. So Prost goes through Berger. It's also, of course, an important time with a clear run for Prost to try and put a bit more daylight between himself and Gerhard Berger. Because although Berger isn't actually threatening him at the moment, it's still aggravating to have to be aware of somebody behind you to pick up the pieces. Prost would far rather just to be able to concentrate purely ahead on Ayrton Senna.
Since things are fairly static at the moment, let's bring you up to date with a bit of the gossip about what might be happening. Jean Alesi, who started off so well here, is rumoured to be going to all sorts of teams, ranging from Ferrari on the one hand to Williams on the other, or staying with Tyrrell. Nigel Mansell is rumoured to be talking to Williams, and in which case his decision not to retire, his decision to retire at the end of 1990 would be reversed. And there is the Englishman. He's had 8 retirements so far this year. He's only had 3 finishes, and he will be hoping that if this is his last race for Ferrari at Monza, and it's certainly that he finishes here. And Prost is faster again.
Very substantially faster. New fastest lap of the race, 27.3, and that he hauled in 0.6, over half a second. He cut into Ayrton Senna's lead on that last lap. If he can sustain that pace, and Senna's tyres aren't letting him go any faster than he is at the moment, then Prost is still very much in this race.
Right, now if you've got a pencil and paper handy, here is the gap. 7.6 seconds at the end of lap 31, and Nigel Mansell there in 4th position. That's 7.6 seconds between Senna leading and Prost second, with Ayrton Senna, number 27, in the McLaren on Goodyear B tyres compared with Prost on Goodyear A's, which are harder. So Senna's tyres will undoubtedly have worn more. That's Nannini in the pits in the Benetton.
That's Piquet, because Nannini's just gone out, so both Benettons have been in the pits. And as you said that, actually, I saw Nannini going out now. It's reasonable to be confused, Murray.
Berger, 3 seconds, 2.5 seconds behind Prost. And Senna is still commanding things, now he's just gone through, lap 32. Now Prost has crossed the line, 7.5 seconds. Prost faster again by 0.2 of a second, but he needs to be pushing Senna harder to make him wear his tyres more in order to be able to close the gap. We're halfway through the Italian Grand Prix now.
Yes, and Prost's increase in speed has taken Berger with him, and the last couple of laps Berger has been lapping quicker than Ayrton Senna. And that could also be a significant pointer, because remember that Berger is on the same compound of tyre as Alain Prost.
Lap 33, race order, Ayrton Senna leading Prost by 7.5 seconds. Berger third, 2.8 seconds behind Prost. Mansell fourth, 7.5 seconds behind Berger. Patrese is fifth, 10 seconds behind Mansell. So there is 17, 19, 26, over half a minute between the first and fifth. And I'm waiting for the 6th man to go through, and I'm delighted to say that it is Ivan Capelli, the Italian, who is rumoured to be driving for Ferrari next year, as are lots of other people, who is in 6th position in the points, ahead of Nakajima, who is 7th, Alessandro Nannini 8th, of course he has just had a pit stop, 9th is Suzuki, 10th is Piquet, who has also had a tyre stop, 11th is Alex Cappi, and 12th his teammate Michele Alboreto, and that is Nelson Piquet being chased by Alex Cappi.
Yes, and the order, or the lap area up front seems to be now established, and that has the fact that Prost again has gone round just a couple of tenths of a second quicker than Senna, and I think that's really where the state of the art is, and that Senna undoubtedly has been receiving his pit signals. He knows that Prost is on a clear run and going flat out, and Senna has responded, but it does seem that Prost is able to lap a couple of tenths quicker than him when they're both on their own going at full speed. This situation, of course, is, although is likely to change as the tyres get more worn, but in what direction it will change, we don't know. We know that the likely one is that Senna will have less grip as the race progresses, but By how much, we don't know.
We can hardly describe this as the most exciting Italian Grand Prix we've ever seen, because things have been very static for a long, long time now. But it's worth watching. Prost, there he is with Berger behind him, and saying again, incidentally, that Gerhard Berger must in some ways have been a disappointment to the McLaren team this year in comparison with that tremendously strong duo that they had last year, Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, because Berger has yet to win a Grand Prix, and Senna is now 7.1 seconds, and Prost is again faster than Senna, and he's consistently pulling at least 0.2 of a second out of the lead per lap.
Absolutely, they both found a little bit more speed, and as they will as the race goes on, as the fuel load comes down and the cars get lighter, but the differential between them of a couple of tenths of a second remained static. So just over 7 seconds. It's still a long way to go, and although Senna, there will still be quite a few laps before they get involved in any more traffic, because Senna's got quite not a clear road ahead of him. There's nobody between him and Prost. But all the hard work of chipping the gap down a couple of tenths a lap can go out of the window if Senna can get through the traffic quickly, and Prost has to wait for half a lap and lose 2 or 3 seconds. That's an awful lot of laps at 0.2 per lap, and that's what happened. That's how he got so far behind, and it's what's happened over the last couple of seasons that Senna has been much more effective through the traffic. He bullies people into getting out of the way, bullies mentally rather than physically, but very effectively.
And he's just completed another lap, the Brazilian ex-world champion, and I'm waiting for Prost, and again Senna is faster, not only than he has been before, but than Alain Prost. 7.2 seconds, lap 35. Nearly 150 miles an hour, and that 127.019 is only 0.3 of a second outside Ayrton Senna's lap record, and his pole position, incidentally, was a new all-time fastest lap of Monza, and that was 1 minute 22.533. But it doesn't, of course, count for the lap record, since it wasn't put up during a race, it was put up in qualifying. There he is. Now look for Prost as he comes round the left-hand. Now he's going under the bridge into the Ascari chicane, third gear. Now the right-hander. Look for Prost as he comes under the bridge, and it should be just about 7 seconds. Berger behind him in third position, and Nigel Mansell is 11.6 seconds behind Berger. 127.9 Nigel Mansell, 127.0 Ayrton Senna. So for whatever reason, Mansell is well off the pace of the race leader Ayrton Senna, who's now round the parabolica into the long finish straight, building up to 190 miles an hour before he comes down to second gear for that right left at the chicane that was put in to slow things down. There he is, going through it now as we look down from the helicopter, and the gap is 7.7 seconds.
Yes, and Senna has really found some more speed. New fastest lap of the race, 126.7. So we're into the 126s, and Prost has been unable to respond. He's still lapping in the low 27s. So Senna has responded and is now actually opening out the lead. 7.8 seconds at the moment.
And that's a lap record. Ayrton Senna has just broken the lap record. 1 minute 26.764 compared with his Lotus Turbo lap record from the past of 126.796, and that is as near as makes no difference, 150 miles an hour. To be exact, it's 149.534, and that is Gerhard Berger in the McLaren Honda. You see ahead of him Alain Prost in second place. Berger, who's had 2 second places this year, has Prost. And so Ayrton Senna now with 5 victories at Phoenix, Monaco, Canada, Germany and Belgium, in comparison with Prost's 4 wins in Brazil, Mexico, Canada and Britain, is on course to increase his World Championship lead of 13 over Prost to 60.
Yes, and they're trading lap records now, no longer just fastest laps, because Alain Prost, as the caption, has broken Senna's new lap record, so that stood for just over a minute. And I'm quite sure Prost's new lap record won't stand for that much longer either. Remember that these cars get steadily quicker as the race goes on, and that I can't see behind all Sanchez, it's one of the Leighton House cars by the look of it being parked. It is indeed, and we saw Gougelman go earlier, so that would appear to be Capelli, who was running in 6th place, so big disappointment for the Leighton House team, who are up into the points.
I hardly dare mention this with my reputation, but Ayrton Senna has yet to win an Italian Grand Prix. You'll remember last year when commandingly in the lead, his Honda engine let go at the Parabolica, smeared his rear tyres with oil, caused him to spin out of the race with a broken engine, to the vast delight of the crowd standing behind the barriers, and let through their new hero, Alain Prost, who, although he was driving a McLaren, became their hero because next year, which is now this year, he was going to be driving a Ferrari. And the previous year, Ayrton Senna, again commandingly in the lead, was rammed out of it by Jean-Louis Schlesser in the Williams car. And so what might have been 3 wins in succession for Ayrton Senna became no wins at all. And in order to get those 3 wins in succession, he has, of course, to win today, plus the 2 victories that he didn't have in the past, if you follow me. And Senna is now leading by 6.7 seconds. Prost has just gone round in 1 minute 26.9, which is 0.8 of a second quicker than Senna, and that is significant. Now, for the first time for a long time, Senna is less than 7 seconds ahead of Prost, who is pulling away from Berger third. Mansell increasingly dropping back, but still in 4th place, ahead of Riccardo Patrese, who is in 5th position, with now waiting for the 6th place man to come through, but it's Nakajima is up into the points.
Yes, so Nakajima is the next man to be lapped, as Nannini very politely lets Prost go. Remember, Nannini's been in the pits, so he's had at least a tyre change and therefore not racing for the lead anymore. Senna goes through, and yes, they are. They're trading lap records, and that was a new lap record for Ayrton Senna, but Prost only 1/10 of a second slower than that. Gap 6.9 seconds.
Now is the pressure that Prost is exerting on Senna, and which Senna will know about, because although there's no question of him being able to see the Ferrari in his mirrors to the right and left of the cockpit, he will certainly know from his continuous conversation by car to pits radio what the gap is, and it's 6.8 seconds. Lap record, Ayrton Senna, 1 minute 49.7, getting closer and closer to that magic 150 miles an hour round Monza as he comes up to catch and lap Satoru Nakajima, the Japanese driver, who for the 2nd time this year looks like scoring a World Championship point. He scored 1 point in Phoenix for finishing in 6th position, jumped out of the car and kissed the hand of Ken Tyrrell, to Ken's immense embarrassment. And Ken may be facing that embarrassment again if Nakajima finishes in 6th place. Well, there's Berger, 3rd position. Nannini is in 7th place behind him, but has been lapped. And here's Prost. Senna, of course, has gone through. The gap was 6.8 seconds, lap 40, and it's still 6.8 seconds. They are 2/600ths of a second different on lap time to the advantage of Alain Prost. And I remind you again that he now is the new lap record holder, but for how much longer I don't know. 1 minute 26.622, which is half a second faster than the lap record which applied before today.
Yes, and the fast and furious pace of the 2 championship leaders up the front has drawn Prost nearly 5 seconds clear of Berger now, which will certainly be a relief to Prost, because he didn't need that joker into the pack. And there is Nakajima. Now, Nakajima could be a problem for Prost, who's known to be careful on his overtaking, because Nakajima's car is very quick in a straight line. The Tyrrell is very, very efficient aerodynamically, although it's down on power, of course, and that's a good example, because the immense power of the Honda engine has failed to sweep Senna past, and he was pretty close when they went onto that straight. But I suspect it will be more of a problem for Prost than for Senna, because Senna will probably muscle his way past now into the chicane, and so he's been able to get past Nakajima with no real delay.
6.8 seconds was the gap before this lap. Has that... Yes, Prost has just again broken the lap record. 1 minute 26.466 to reduce Senna's lead to 6.1 seconds. But I remind you that Senna may have been delayed a little by Satoru Nakajima. You can see how much he's pulled away from the Tyrrell behind him now. Berger is still third. Mansell is still fourth.
Yes, and for those of you who like numbers, there is the first 150-mile-an-hour racing lap, certainly on the circuit in this configuration with all these chicanes in. And that honour falls to Alain Prost. But I doubt very much whether that fastest lap will remain as the lap record by the end of this race.
There's Senna. Now, he's got Philippe Alliot in front of him. That's Nakajima, who has been lapped. That is Alain Prost, who is in second position. Berger is now 5.2 seconds behind the Ferrari. Mansell is 18 seconds behind Berger. And Senna has passed Alliot and is now coming up to the other Ligier of Nicola Larini, who just scraped into the race, 26th on the grid. And Alain Prost, of course, has got to get past Nakajima, and then Alliot, and then Larini. And if past form is anything to go by, Senna's likely to make a better job of it than Prost. However, 6.1 seconds on lap 42 has turned into 5.1 seconds as Alain Prost again shatters the lap record. 1 minute 26.376, 150.2 miles an hour. I think we have a race on our hands now, but it will depend on Prost being able to get through the traffic efficiently.
Yes, and our hopes for a good race are that he will, and what we have to hope there is the fact that Senna's passing of this group has alerted them as he gets past one without any problem. That's one of the Ligiers out of the way. Still two more cars though.
Yeah, it was Alliot that he passed. He's still got to get past Nicola Larini. 5.1 seconds. Prost is the fastest man on the circuit. We are on lap 43. It is a 53-lap race. So things are heightening in interest and excitement. The flag marshal's doing an efficient job there, waving the blue flag, because, as you see, Nakajima has got Alain Prost right behind him, and the marshals were saying to Nakajima by means of the blue flag, and he's holding Prost up now. Not anymore, he's not. The Frenchman is past. The marshals were saying by means of the international code of flag signals and showing him the blue one, there is someone behind you who wants to pass and has every right to pass. And FISA, incidentally, who have issued a whole new lot of regulations about the construction of Formula One cars starting from San Marino next year, have said that if flag signals are ignored or if drivers drive dangerously in future, they're going to be in real trouble, and Prost is catching Senna.
Prost lost nearly a couple of seconds on that last lap to Senna amongst the traffic, and even though he got past fairly easily, he was a good second and a half slower than he was lapping. The gap has now gone back out to over 6 seconds. So Senna got through that group of three with less damage, and remember, Prost hasn't passed all three of them yet.
10 laps to go, as you saw from the caption. Senna leading Prost by 6 seconds. Berger third, 4 seconds behind Prost. Mansell fourth in a reliable Ferrari, but he won't be very happy with fourth place. 22 seconds behind Berger. 16 seconds ahead of Patrese fifth. Nakajima in the points in the Tyrrell in 6th position. Nannini has been lapped in 7th place, as has his teammate Piquet, who is 8th. Alex Caffey in the Arrows is in 9th position. And Michele Alboreto is in 10th place, followed by De Cesaris. Larini is 12th and has been lapped twice. And Philippe Alliot is in 13th position. And we have so far 9 retirements as Ayrton Senna goes through to complete his 44th lap and the gap, which was 6.1 seconds as Alain Prost goes through, is now 7.7 because Ayrton Senna has gone round 1.5 seconds faster than Prost. He is replying with a vengeance to the challenge of the V12 Ferrari.
Yes, well, of course, that was Prost going slower in the traffic rather than Senna doing anything different, and Prost still holding the fastest lap, but really it's Senna's real ability to get through traffic as if it's not there, because Prost certainly seems to lose a lot of time, and so, as we surmised, all that hard work, chipping away at the lead, 2 or 3 tenths of a second a lap to get it down, and in 2 laps, Prost has lost some 3 seconds to Senna on the road.
We're going to know the condition of Senna's tyres simply by that gap. We'll say again, it bears repetition, that Senna is on a softer compound of tyre than Alain Prost is, and we will know by the state of the gap, the state of his tyres. If that gap starts to come down dramatically, then Senna is going to have to face the problem of hanging on, because there's no way he can come into the pits now, take on a new set of tyres and catch Prost and pass him again if the Frenchman had gone into the lead. Senna is now committed to staying out where he is as he comes through on his 45th lap, 8.2 seconds ahead of Prost. He's lapped half a second faster this lap than the Ferrari, and it looks as though it's in the bag for Ayrton Senna.
Very much so, because that actually was Senna's fastest lap of the race so far, and with only a few laps to go, there's obviously no problem with Senna's tyres. There was never going to be a problem with wear, just that if they got a bit too hot, the softer compound, that they would lose performance as the race went on. Well, that has proved not to be the case, and Senna really only has to stand up now to win. Prost has given it his best shot, he's chased hard, and he's lost out again in the traffic, as has been the pattern of their battles over the last couple of seasons.
And the Italian crowd is on hold. They are very quiet and very restrained. There are 2 cars in this race that they really care about. That's the one they care about most, Alain Prost, and the other, of course, is the Lionheart, as they call him, Nigel Mansell's Ferrari, which is in 4th position. And with the McLarens of the not very much liked Ayrton Senna in the lead, not very much liked in Italy by the Italians, I mean, and Gerhard Berger in 3rd place. They're waiting and hoping for something to happen to the McLarens to the advantage of the Ferraris, and it certainly doesn't look as though that is going to happen, because once again Ayrton Senna has done it. He is demonstrating, he's giving a vote of confidence in his tyres by keeping up that lap record breaking pace of his lap after lap. He may be a tenth of a second faster, quotes only, close quotes, than the previous lap, but that is a considerable achievement and demonstrates that his tyres are very healthy indeed. 8.5 seconds now. So Senna, Prost, Berger, as it has been for most of the race. Nigel Mansell still 4th, as he has been for most of the race. We're waiting now for Riccardo Patrese to come through in 5th position, as Nannini goes through 8th, has been lapped. So Riccardo Patrese a long way back in 5th position. Nakajima now, of course, has been lapped in 6th place. Piquet 7th, his teammate Alessandro Nannini. Very disappointing race for the Benetton team, with their cars potentially finishing in 7th and 8th places. They had hoped for something better than this in a well-balanced car with the strong new Ford V8 engine, but it was clearly not to be. And here is the McLaren coming up behind Michele Alboreto and Andrea De Cesaris. Senna forces through in front of the chicane. That's Michele Alboreto in front of him, who wasn't very popular in Belgium for holding Alain Prost up and potentially denying him the chance to get ahead.
Yes, well, and quite rightly so, because it really was a disgraceful piece of driving by a man of Alboreto's experience, who at least has the experience he has in his time being up at the front of Grand Prix, and he has had to lap back markers, and he ought to know what it's like and be acutely aware of faster cars coming up behind him. Anyway, the fuss that was made about his extremely poor performance in Belgium seems to have got through to him, because he stepped very smartly off the line to let Senna through there.
Andrea De Cesaris behind Michele Alboreto in the Arrows, who is fighting to retain his seat with the team. The Arrows team are going to be powered by Porsche V12 engines next year, and a lot of people are jockeying for position in the Arrows team, including Thierry Boutsen, who's waiting to hear his future as Alain Prost laps Yannick Dalmas. We don't very often see an AGS in a Grand Prix, because very often they don't qualify, but Dalmas did, his teammate Tarquini didn't, and on lap 48 it's Senna 9 seconds ahead of Prost now, Berger and Mansell, followed by Patrese and Nakajima.
Yes, we haven't made much mention of Nigel Mansell in this race, and the reason being is that poor Nigel's having a pretty miserable time out there. It's quite clear that his car is not nearly as quick as Alain Prost. He's dropped steadily back through the race. He's having a lonely race in 4th place. He's in a comfortable lead over 5th, but he's certainly struggling, and in fact Piquet, who's been in the pits and has been lapped, has been catching Mansell and looks about to repass him. Well, that will happen himself.
4 laps to go after this one to the end of the 53 lap Italian Grand Prix, with Senna on his way to another, what we can only describe as crushingly competent win, to make it 6 in the year, to raise his World Championship point score to 72, which really puts effectively the World Championship out of the reach of Alain Prost, even when you take the discounted scores into account. There is Senna. Now look down the field and you see the battle between Michele Alboreto and Andrea De Cesaris, who've still got to be lapped by Alain Prost in order to try still to get to grips with Ayrton Senna. 8.751 seconds ahead of Prost, and there's no change in the first 6 places. Nakajima 6th, Piquet 7th, Nannini 8th have all been lapped down to the Rettifilia, and it looks as though they are not actually going to hold Alain Prost up, they being Alboreto and De Cesaris, because Alain Prost in the Ferrari comes up to Andrea De Cesaris as they go into the Curva Grande, which of course has lost all its sting now with the double chicane before it, and he will try to get past them before they get to the second chicane at the Rouge, and it doesn't look to me as though he's going to do it. No, he doesn't, and this means to say that the 8.7 second gap between Senna and Prost on lap 49 is surely going to be extended even further on lap 48, because Prost still is not past De Cesaris in the Dallara, which is going to use a Judd V10 engine next year, incidentally.
Yes, well, I think Prost is taking, you can see these two battling away, and he's taking it very easy, and his problem now is Berger catching. I think he's long since given up any hope of being able to pressure Senna, but he's going to have to step on it a bit right now, and these two are being no help, battling away, having their own private battle, but that should carry Prost, well, it's carried him past Alboreto, but he's still stuck behind the Cesaris, but at least he's got Alboreto between himself and Berger. He ought now to get a good tow over the start-finish line and pass him quite easily into the first chicane.
And as I said, that 8.7 seconds that Ayrton Senna led Alain Prost by has increased massively to 11.9 seconds as they go into lap 51 out of 53, and that demonstrates how much Alboreto and De Cesaris delayed Alain Prost. He could also demonstrate, I suppose, how much Ayrton Senna is able to dive through gaps and go past people in a way that Alain Prost is not able to. He makes no bones about it, he's not ashamed of it, he just says that Senna is better at it than he is. Perhaps, he says, because I'm older and care more than Senna does. Well, whatever, Ayrton Senna now is virtually home for the 26th Grand Prix victory of his career. He's on lap 51. There's just 2 laps to go at the end of this one. And that's Berger being furiously flagged. And Berger, of course, now, as James pointed out, is much, much closer to Alain Prost. He was only 1.5 seconds behind the Frenchman's Ferrari at the beginning of the lap that they are on now, because of the way Alboreto and De Cesaris had held up Alain Prost, and I notice incidentally that De Cesaris is now ahead of Michele Alboreto, and as Ayrton Senna goes through to complete his 52nd lap with only the 52nd and 53rd to go, with a lead now over Alain Prost of just over 12 seconds. The interest is whether Gerhard Berger is going to be able to make it another McLaren first and second by catching and getting past Alain Prost, which I rather doubt. Nigel Mansell still way back in fourth position, soldiering on. Nigel, of course, has now made it up with Ferrari, but it looks as though the critics who say that Ferrari don't supply the second man with the best car will be adding fuel to the fire after this race.
Yes, I think that's very true. Ferrari seem to basically run a one-car team in terms of getting a competitive car out. Well, certainly this year that seems to have been the case, and unfortunate for Nigel Mansell. In the meantime, I think that Prost is, to his great relief, I'm sure, has got a pretty clear track in front of him. In fact, there's nobody between him and Senna, and with only just over a lap to go, he shouldn't have any problem with Berger. He can certainly lap comfortably quicker than Berger on his own, and has been able to through most of this race, and I can't see Berger getting at him. So Senna crosses the line.
To go into the Ultimo Giro, which is the last lap. It is lap 53, and Senna has again demonstrated that he is the man of Grand Prix racing these days, certainly when he is in a McLaren Honda.
Yes, indeed, Senna certainly, before we got to Monza, looked to be firm favourite for the World Championship. As from the middle of the season, things have gone better and better for McLaren since he got his contract negotiations out of the way. Both he and the McLaren team have really knuckled under into getting on with this year's World Championship, and that is an Arrows, and I can't see which one it is, but Alboreto is the one we've seen circulating for most of the race, and that looks like an accident on the curve. He was certainly racing hard. But to return to this man, Ayrton Senna, the dominance here was complete. He got the pole, he had to work hard for everything this weekend. He worked hard for pole, only got it on the very last lap of practice right at the end of it. He has worked hard for this race, the team have worked extremely hard, and he has now put the World Championship very much in his grasp. He would have to have extreme bad luck to lose it now, because Prost has got an awful lot of points to make up. So Ayrton Senna wins.
Over the line to win the Italian Grand Prix, and that's his 26th victory, and by doing so with Alain Prost finishing 6 seconds behind him, because Alain Prost's last lap was 6 seconds faster than that of Ayrton Senna, but have no illusions about the fact that it was because Ayrton Senna slowed down. And you can see from the fist of victory that he's giving out of the McLaren that he is a very happy man indeed, as he should be. Gerhard Berger in the second McLaren Honda, demonstrating the superiority of the Woking team by finishing in third position. Again fails to win a Grand Prix, but brings the second McLaren home on the podium, first and third for McLaren. And Nigel Mansell has yet to come through, and that is Ayrton Senna. For the first time, we are shown a picture of Ayrton Senna. That camera has been on his car, an operative, presumably, throughout the race. But sadly, we have a man indeed, as he should be. So, in Italy, Ayrton Senna wins his 26th Grand Prix. Alain Prost second, Gerhard Berger third. Nigel Mansell in fourth position, Riccardo Patrese in fifth position, and sixth for the last point, Satoru Nakajima.
I had so many problems yesterday. I wasn't able to do any running, any setup, which was vital for today's result. So I had only this morning to try to get the car as good as possible, and then make the tire choice, the right one, and get everything right, because at the level of the championship we are running, you gotta have everything right. So it was a lot of unknown, but of course it was a great victory.
The car was quite good at the beginning, but as usual, and this time I was behind Gerhard. It was difficult behind him because I made a choice with a with the hard tire, with A, and I don't think it was a good choice. And behind him I was sliding too much, so I think I blistered the tires. And then I had a big vibration, especially at the end. It was not possible to push harder. Every time I was pushing, it was worse.
I think the tire choice was wrong. I went to the harder tires. What was okay the first laps, but then as the tank, because the car goes lighter, I just was sliding too much.
So that victory for Ayrton Senna increases his World Championship lead over Alain Prost to 16 points. Gerhard Berger is still third, Thierry Boutsen fourth, Nelson Piquet in fifth position, but Riccardo Patrese moves up to sixth position ahead of Nannini and Mansell. McLaren, of course, have increased their lead in the Constructors' Championship over Ferrari to 37 points, with Williams in third place and Benetton in fourth position. Now, in 2 weeks' time, it's the Portuguese Grand Prix, and the circuit there should suit the Ferraris. They need a win to keep their World Championship hopes alive. But will it? Watch Grand Prix on BBC Two.